It's an old story, one of my favorites growing up. Perhaps you've heard it too. The poor farmer goes to the rabbi with a complaint. He lives in a one-room house with his wife and many children. Everyone is always complaining and nagging him. He is sick to death of them. What should he do? The rabbi asks, "Do you have a cow?" "Yes, I have a cow." "Well," says the rabbi, "bring the cow into the house with you." Now, who's the man to argue with a wise rabbi? So he brings the cow into his tiny house. A week later, he's back in the rabbi's office. Things are worse now. On top of the whining and complaining, now there's mooing, and I keep bumping into the cow when I'm making my breakfast. What can I do? "Do you have any chickens?" "Yeah, I've got chickens." "Then bring those into the house." So he does. A week later, he's back again. Now there's complaining and nagging and mooing and clucking, and the cow keeps stepping on the chickens. "Do you have a donkey?" "I got a donkey, let me guess, bring him into the house." Exactly. 2 days later, the man is back in the rabbi's office, well past the end of his rope with all the complaining and nagging and mooing and clucking and braying. "I've been kicked 17 times. The rabbi thinks for a long while. Then he says, "Take the cow and the chickens and the donkeys out of the house." Gratefully, the man does just that. A week later, he's back in the rabbi's study. He says, "I just want to thank you. It's so quiet in my house now. I love my children. Everything's so clean. I've not been kicked in days. What a relief." "See," says the rabbi, "things could always be worse." In this story, "it could always be worse" is presented as one of the Jewish people's secrets of survival. No matter how bad things get, the Jewish people can endure by reminding ourselves that things could always be worse. And suddenly, like the bedraggled father in the story, the realization is supposed to remind us that maybe things aren't that bad. I often find myself leading services on Thanksgiving weekend, which means I give the annual Thanksgiving sermon. I looked back this week and I've preached about today's exact parsha, Vayetze, in both 2017 and 2020, and I talked about Thanksgiving both times. Maybe someday I'll publish a book that's just my gratitude sermons. It's fitting because anyone who knows me knows that gratitude is an important part of my Jewish practice. You may well have heard me give a sermon extolling the benefits of gratitude. You may have heard me talking about the psychological experiments that have shown that a practice of gratitude can increase our happiness and improve our health. You may have heard me preach about how gratitude can help us to overcome challenges in our lives, how it moves us from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. You may have heard me tell the story of my mother, whose daily practice of gratitude helped her to navigate her journey of living with and eventually dying from cancer with grace and love and light. You've all heard me introduce silent prayer by saying that you could make a list of 5 things you're grateful for today, accompanied by my promise that it will change your life. And I stand by all of that. A daily, intentional practice of gratitude has transformed my life and helped my family to navigate difficulty. Gratitude, I believe, works. And yet, this message feels harder to deliver this year. With all that's going on in the world, with the images of death and destruction in Israel and Gaza, while the immense weight of anti-Semitism abroad and at home weighs on me, my annual sermon where I disclose my simple secret to a happy life feels harder to authentically deliver. My heart is hurting. My heart is exhausted from so many weeks of hurting, and maybe your heart is too. How can one talk of gratitude when one is suffering? And maybe I'm supposed to tell you it could always be worse, but I don't want to. Because I don't want you to mishear me and think that I'm saying that things are not that bad. We should be honest about our situation. Things have been worse. The Nazis have not taken power. They're not coming to our doors to round us up. But that is a cheap comfort. Just because things could be worse does not negate the fact that they are bad. I hear this, it could always be worse thinking in pastoral conversations. It comes out in one of two ways. Sometimes someone might say, yeah, Rabbi, I know this looks bad, but there are people who are way less fortunate than me. Or they say, how can I complain when in truth I have so much to be grateful for? These comments come from a heartfelt desire not to wallow, from an honest recognition of our privilege and gifts. But I cannot help but hear in these statements something deeper too. Maybe it's a defense mechanism. If I can name the good things in my life, it will prevent me from feeling this pain. Or maybe it's an expression of guilt. If I have so much to be grateful for, then why am I hurting? It's a short leap from, it could always be worse, to, I don't have any right to complain. Gratitude is not a shield from pain. It's not bubble wrap we can drape over ourselves to protect us from life's slings and arrows. Our suffering is real. Our experience of pain is not determined by how much pain other people are in. You can be heartbroken even when there are people who have it worse than you. You can be depressed even when you are surrounded by blessings. And if my endless messages of gratitude over the years have ever come across denying your right to feel pain and sadness, I apologize. We do have a lot to be grateful for. And sometimes we suffer. One does not negate the other. We must hold both truths. And we can acknowledge our pain without denying the pain of others. In fact, the acknowledgement might even make us more sensitive to them. There's a story in this week's Parsha that I don't usually talk about. I haven't talked about in my previous two Vayetze Thanksgiving sermons. Usually I talk about how Leah named her fourth son Judah, saying, Hapa'am odeh et Adonai, this time I will thank God. Usually I say that this shows how she shifted her thinking from focusing on her hardships to focusing on her blessings. But this is only part of the story. Her life does not get a whole lot better after the birth of her fourth son, the one she names Mr. Gratitude. Even with her newfound thankfulness, Jacob still doesn't love her. He still lives in Rachel's tent. Life is still hard. Then in the next chapter, there's this strange scene. Leah's eldest son, Reuben, the one who she named God Sees My Pain, is walking through the field when he spots some mandrake plants. Ramban says that the mandrake has a pleasing, almost intoxicating odor. Maybe the mandrake has the power of a love potion that might make Reuben's father finally fall in love with his mother. So he picks them for Leah. Rachel spots her sister with the mandrakes and begs her to share them. Leah refuses, saying, "You've stolen my husband, and now you want my mandrakes too." Rachel suggests that in exchange for some of Leah's mandrakes, she could send Jacob to Leah's tent that night. But wait, why does Rachel want the mandrakes? She doesn't need a love potion. She already has Jacob's affection. But she's been barren. Perhaps she has noticed Jacob spending more time with Leah and her boys. Perhaps she felt him slipping away from her. In this short exchange, I read so much pain. Leah's pain of being married to a man who did not love her. Rachel's pain at being unable to deliver a child to her beloved husband. Both women are suffering. And maybe in that moment they really see each other for the first time in years. It's not a competition about whose pain is worse. I am in pain, and so is my sister. Maybe for a while they just sat and wept together. And only then was Rachel able to see a way forward. Maybe we can share the mandrakes. I'll take some and you take some. And maybe we can share Jacob too. I'll take him tonight and I'll send him to you tonight, and tomorrow send him to me. In this story, it's not the act of gratitude that helps them experience abundance. They only find it when they sit for a moment in the pain, when they stop denying that things are hard. There's an old joke about a Jewish passenger on a train who won't stop complaining. "Oi, I'm so thirsty! Oi, I'm thirsty!" he says over and over again until finally another passenger says, "Here, have some of my water. Just please stop moaning." The old man takes a drink, and for a few minutes he's quiet, and then he says, "Oi, I was so thirsty." The joke, I guess, is that Jews love to complain. Well, not complain exactly. We love to kvetch, that wonderful Yiddish word. A kvetch is different than a complaint. A complaint focuses on the sorrow. Woe is me, who will come and fix this for me? A kvetch focuses on the injustice. This is not fair. I'm in pain and it's not fair because life isn't fair. And a kvetch is communal. There's a rhythm and a music to it when we share our kvetches with others. Anyone who's been around a group of old Jews knows that music. We call it an organ recital. This organ hurts, and that organ hurts. Kvetch offers a bit of humor. The food was cold and the portions were small. And a kvetch has an element of hope. Maybe there's a way out of this. It will not always be this way. That's a kvetch, more than a complaint. A kvetch acknowledges injustice. It helps us feel less alone. It inspires humor. It rekindles hope. In this time of darkness on this Thanksgiving weekend, I want to offer a defense of the kvetch as the underappreciated companion to gratitude. Gratitude can not end our suffering. Gratitude can help soothe our pain and increase our resilience, but we don't get there by ignoring the pain. A gratitude that denies our suffering cheapens both. A kvetch is a Jewish way to reassert the truth of our suffering. Sure, things could be worse. Sure, things may well get better, but in this moment, I am hurting. And if I acknowledge that, if I really look at it, instead of looking past it, it will open my heart to the suffering of those around me too. My sister, my brother, my neighbor who is also hurting, maybe more, maybe less, certainly differently, but if my pain is real, so is theirs. And then we can look for things to be grateful for, not to erase the pain, but to lighten the burden. I am suffering, and I am also surrounded by people who love me, and I have privilege, and I am safe. Not but, and. Perhaps the true secret to Jewish resilience is identifying both the tragedy and the gratitude. We are the descendants of Reuben. God sees my pain. And Judah, I will thank God. We're the people of the blessing and the kvetch. In this season of Thanksgiving, I pray your burdens are not too heavy. And I pray that your blessings are abundant. And I pray that in naming both, you find light and resilience and hope. Shabbat shalom.